My name is Anne Statura, and I am the coordinator for community-based learning and community outreach in the Spanish department and chair of the Common Hour Committee this fall. I'd like to introduce our ASL interpreter, Emily Phipps. Thank you, Emily, for interpreting for us at Common Hour. A very warm welcome to all at our 6th Common Hour of the semester. Common Hour is a unique and inclusive program that brings the Franklin and Marshall community together weekly during the academic year for culturally and intellectually enriching events. It is the only regularly scheduled event that unites students, faculty, and staff, and invites the larger community to join us. Throughout the pandemic, the Common Hour has continued to provide a virtual gathering space and a source of inspiration, education, and compelling discussion for the F&M community and beyond. The Common Hour Committee is pleased to announce a call for proposals for Spring 2023 in-person Common Hour events. Additionally, please consider submitting a proposal for the December 1st Now Hour. Proposals are being accepted now through November 1st. We hope you will join us during Common Hour next week for our second Mueller lecture of the semester, Lyrical Leadership, The Paths of Poetry, featuring Kevin Young, poet, author, essayist, and director of the Smithsonian's National Museum of African American History and Culture in Washington, D.C. During today's event, Zoom viewers can submit questions for our speakers via the Q&A feature. Please indicate your affiliation with the college, but we do not need your name. And now I'd like to introduce Ashley Rondini, Associate Professor of Sociology, who will present today's speaker.
Thank you so much, Anne. It's my very deep pleasure to introduce Daniel Acheampong, who is a co-founder and general partner at Visible Hands, an early-stage investment firm with a virtual first accelerator on a mission to highlight and invest in the limitless potential of overlooked founders. At the earliest stages of company building, Visible Hands provides meaningful funding, personalized support, and social capital, helping their founders build exceptional technology startups. As for Daniel individually, he received his bachelor's degree at Brandeis University, where he was a proud Posse Scholar. He also received a dual master's in business administration from the Wharton School and the public administration from Harvard Kennedy School. Prior to graduate school, Daniel was an associate at Summit Partners with a premier investment firm, where he managed the firm's due diligence process to raise investment funds. And previously, he was a financial analyst at Goldman Sachs, where he supported senior management in supervising the New England private wealth management business. On a personal note, he also happens to be one of the most extraordinary people I've ever had the privilege of knowing. And I'm so glad that he could be with us here today. Thank you, Daniel, for joining us. And thank you all for being with us today to meet Daniel.
Ashley, it is such a privilege to be here, and I'm honored. And for you all, just to give you some context, Ashley is one of the most incredible people that I know, and I love her dearly. She has been instrumental in my life in multiple dimensions. But it is such an honor to be here with you all, Franklin and Marshall community. This is a really exciting thing, and I wish I would have known about something like this and adopted it into my school when I was at Brandeis. I love this Common Hour idea. So to give you all some context about myself, I want to actually take a step back and go a little bit to the beginning, and then walk my way to the journey to how I got here and where I'm sitting now. So I was born in Ghana, and I came to the US around 6 years old. And my father was the first one to take the journey to the US. And, you know, my father was an entrepreneur, and he worked in the carpentry industry. But I remember when I asked him, you know, why did you leave everything to to come to the US. And for him, he said it was the American dream so that my kids could get a better education. So my dad came to the US, brought my mom after, and then shortly after brought me and my other siblings. And this became an important, for me, kind of turning point, because the more I got to understand the opportunity set, I realized that I had to take advantage of what was before me. So I went to, my parents took us to Brooklyn, grew up in Brooklyn, New York. And Brooklyn was, this place where for me, it was just like, trying to learn a new language, right? My English was funny when I came to the US. I was trying to learn a new language, a new culture, how to assimilate. And I was embraced with the love of our community, and that showed that this, in order to do anything, is really a collection. It takes a village to push people forward. So my community in Brooklyn became an important part of me. And from Brooklyn, I went to Brandeis High School, and this is, typically when I say Brandeis, people immediately assume Brandeis University, but I didn't really know about Brandeis University until at Brandeis High School, I was starting to consider a college. And for me at that time too, thinking about college, I realized that the cost of college was so expensive that my dad wouldn't be able to afford, and my mom also couldn't support. So my dad, to make that, key connection here, when he came to the US, the jobs that he was able to get didn't really wasn't enough to support to support or provide that meaningful capital. So my dad, worked as a janitor for 25 years. My mom became a nurse, and they worked so hard. In fact, my dad, I think he's one of the hardest working individuals that I know. He would get home around midnight and then be up at 4 a.m. ready to go to a new shift. And every morning I'll see him on his knees, before he left the house. And that just had such a huge impression on me, that just going on your knees to show a sense of appreciation, and acknowledge the gratefulness to be able to start a new day afresh. That was an important impression on me, and something that I do every single day. But I knew that my parents couldn't pay for college. So I began to seek opportunities to help cover some of that cost. And I mean, I became obsessive. I was, trying to do all the activities that I could, find resources, speak to anybody that could hear me. And luckily, I was able to learn about Posse. Posse is, I get excited when I talk about Posse. Right? Posse, I would say that Posse changed my life. Without Posse, I don't know that I would have been able to have financially afforded college. And mind you, in high school, I had strong grades. I worked really hard, but without the financial support, I knew that I was getting limited. And also this began to show the challenges of education, right? That the cost is so expensive that a lot of incredibly talented students are not afforded the opportunity to go to some of the best colleges in the country because they can't afford it. But Posse for me was a game changer here, and it allowed me to do that. But in Posse, you also go to schools with a group of folks, that you start this journey with. And for me, my Posse mates are not just friends; they have really become my brothers and sisters. So I went to Posse. I went to Posse at Brandeis University, and with Posse, when you go there, you're not just also left there by yourself within these schools. You have incredible advisors, and Ashley happened to be ours, and I was very lucky for that. Ashley, just again, played a huge role in helping create strong bonds with our cohort, helping us navigate the challenges that it comes to college. And and in the posse, with the friendship, it also helped me understand what are the potential for me career-wise and academic-wise, and also to be part and involved within the community at Brandeis. So at Brandeis in my journey, I decided to study economics and politics. And, the economics and the politics piece came in because I started Brandeis in 2007. And, this was right around the time of the financial crisis. And I remember right before college, one of my maths teachers, Mr. Pachi wanted me to participate in an activity called the Fed Challenge. Now, the idea is that with the Fed Challenge is that you go to the Federal Reserve, you make an argument about what you're seeing in the economy as students, right? And you compete with other schools. Now, when Mr. Pachi told me about this, I was like, Mr. Pachi, I'm good. I don't have time for this. I got to go play basketball. I'm on a basketball team. I'm on a soccer team. I don't have time for this. But he was like, look, Daniel, if you don't do this, I'm going to get you kicked off the basketball team. And it was kind of a hard push, but it worked. Because I said, Mr. Pachi, all right, well, why don't we figure out a schedule? And by participating in the Fed Challenge team, it really showed me the power of economics, right? That how something as small as interest rates impacts the price of coffee, the price of the food that we eat. And in fact, now we're seeing that impact reflected across what we're seeing in inflation. It's all connected. And Mr. Pachi helped me see that. So I said, this is so cool that I really want to dive deeper into it, make it my major, and really kind of make sure that I become educated in this. And through that, it led me to the path of finance and economics and starting to think about how does flow of capital work? Who moves the money and who receives the money, and how is that used to create businesses or the different things that we experience? So at Brandeis, that also afforded me the opportunity to become treasurer of the student union, understanding the flow of capital. So and as treasurer, I was managing about $1.2 million across the students' budget, helping with the activities and facilitation of all the events that were happening on campus. But for me, that was also an exposure to like, how do you manage finance? How do you manage money, right? And another incredible learning lesson. And the exposure to that allowed me to get an internship at Goldman Sachs my junior year of school. And this, at Goldman Sachs, by going into that field of finance and diving deeper into the interest rates and the economic movement, also began to expose to me some of the challenges that we see in different communities, right? That capital is not evenly distributed. Even though talent is, capital isn't. So I really began to think about then how do we leverage access to capital to folks who don't, who are not historically haven't received it, and what is the economic, not only the economic benefit, but what are we losing in society if we're not deeply investing not only advice but meaningful dollars into communities. So I began to think about all these things as I got exposed to the financial markets. So from Goldman, I came back to school. I became student union president at Brandeis, and this was really kind of continuing to think about how do we challenge systems, the status quo, because at that point there hadn't been a Black person who had maintained the highest student position on campus. And I began to ask my question, why is that, right? Why is that across the lifespan of the school? So my friends and I came together, my posse really came together to say, we want to do something different and ensure that we're pushing diversity, collaboration, and innovation across the institution. And we received incredible backing from the community. So it was just an amazing experience to say, look, if you take the step, things will happen. You will get a lot of no's along the way, but you will also receive people who will say, I got your back. I'll push you forward. I will encourage you. And I began to experience that at Brandeis, and I had a phenomenal experience. From Brandeis, I went to Goldman full time. And this was when really things was beginning to take place. So at Goldman, I worked as a financial analyst, working with the region head and other capital investment managers, helping them manage money, but also helping them manage the business. So it gave me a comprehensive perspective about, how does the business side of capital management work? Had some phenomenal advisors and mentors there who opened their arms and hands to say, Daniel, I will teach you and show you the way. And then from Goldman, I was recruited to Summit Partners. Now, Summit Partners is a private equity firm mainly focused in the growth equity area. Now, to give folks some context about what that means is that when you look at the spectrum of venture capital or spectrum of startups, right? Before a company becomes big, it has to start somewhere. It has to start small. And that spectrum, you move across different stages from what we call the early stage, which could include your friends and family, to what we call pre-seed. And pre-seed is that you have a little bit of the idea, you're moving towards, you're trying to test out customer, to seed. And then Series A, and you keep moving on from Series A, Series B, and at some point you get to the growth equity stage. And when your company does really well, it moves all the way to what we call the public markets. It goes to IPO. So at Summit Partners, I was in the growth equity space, and also began to see how meaningful dollars, when that is invested in companies, that it could really have catalytic impact in communities, in organizations, in employees, right? And how that can proliferate across. So another incredible learning. And this also was another important time when I said, I'm helping raise meaningful dollars, billions of dollars. And when I looked across, picked my head up, and you just look across the whole venture industry, what I just described from the early stage all the way to the later stage, you realize that less than 10% of investor dollars goes to 70% of the population that is composed of women and folks of color. So I'm just going to pause there to let that settle in. 70% of the US population is composed of women and racial minorities, but yet they receive less than 10% of investor dollars. And then if you go down, you break that down even further. If you are Latinx or a woman of color, it gets less than 1%. But yet, Black women is the fastest growing entrepreneurial base in the country. So then you see a disconnect, right? That why is this the case? And why is this the status quo? Why has it happened for so long? So my partners and I said, we want to change this, that we want to create a process that identify the talent at the early stage of company building, and not just invest money, but you provide wraparound services to help them build their company and move on from stages to stages to stages. So this began to happen. The ideation began to happen when I started graduate school after Summit. And for graduate school, I went to Wharton for my MBA, combined with policy at Harvard, the Kennedy School. And while I was a student, for graduate school, I was also my partners and I starting to ideate those ideas that I mentioned, like the things that we were thinking about, the problem that we were obsessed with, that we want to change this. So, a lot of my friends now ask me, how did you build this while you were in school? And then while your other co-founder had a full-time job? Well, two of my co-founders both had a full-time job. And I think this is an important lesson for entrepreneurs, is that you just have to make the time. And you can't say, I'm going to do a little bit here on Monday or a little bit here on Saturday. You have to be fully committed, fully committed. And that commitment on the daily basis creates a habit. It creates trust, right, between you and your partners, but it also creates trust between you and the idea that you're working on, right? And you're constantly tinkering and moving it and pushing it forward. So it takes time. And, you don't just go from 0 to 10. And sometimes, people say you go from 0 to 1, but really you go from 0 to 0.001, 0 to 0, 002. So it's incremental steps, and you have to be obsessive about those incremental steps. So while I was in school, my partners and we met I think it was on every Monday after work from like 6 to 10 p.m. we met. And then from our weekends, we committed our weekends just working on the ideas obsessively. And then it got to a point where the timing began to also shift, right? That we began to spend more time on the company as well. But we were obsessed about the problem. And I think that's something that and I also emphasize to entrepreneurs that the solution is important, but the obsession about the problem, I believe, is more important because it gives room for iteration to happen on the solution, right? So don't get too bogged down in a solution, but focus on who is my customer? Why should I spend time with the customer? What do they care about? And what are the resources that you bring in to ensure that the things I'm thinking about actually make sense to them? So being obsessed with the customer, the problem that they're facing. So while in graduate school process, we began to build our visible hands. And then around that time, COVID happened, right? We were like, should we actually go build this company? I was just about to graduate. And then my co-founders were thinking about quitting their jobs. But then again, COVID happened. And at the time, all my savings was pretty much invested in the stock market. It was invested in the public market. And part of my training is that I came from the finance world, so I feel very comfortable in those arenas. But it was, the world was in shambles, right? It was hard to see how COVID was, the amount of people that died, the pain that it caused, the confusion that it caused within communities, also the distancing that it caused amongst families. It was really hard. And, I remember sitting at my desk the day of my graduation. My graduation was virtual. And I was thinking to myself, man, do I really want to do this? Because my savings are down. My colleagues, their savings are also down. I have to tell my family that I don't have a job. And again, I'm the financial backstop for my family. My dad was a janitor, and it was a really tough decision to make. And I remember one of my co-founders, Yasmin, came to us and she said, look, regardless of how difficult it is, if we don't do this, so many people will suffer. So many ideas will die because they're not given the opportunity to even see the light. So we said, you know what, let's go for it. And we went for it, went about a year and a half or so building the company without receiving any pay. It was just like being obsessed with solving a problem. And we kept our heads down and worked. And luckily, we were incredibly fortunate to have established incredible relationships along the way, showed our commitment to the problem, the way that we were thinking about our solution, and partners who can come along board. So JP Morgan became one of our first sponsors and wrote a pretty meaningful check, which is public. They gave us about $750,000 to start our operating capital. Now, when you're starting an investment fund, you need 3 sources of capital. The first one is that you need operating capital. Second is you need human capital, you need people. And then the third piece is you need investment capital, money to actually put into the companies. So JP Morgan was key in ensuring that we were able to get this business going. And then from then on, we were very grateful to have support from, other companies like Goldman Sachs, First Republic, Bank of America, and all these incredible organizations who came to join us in our mission, to highlight and invest in the limitless potential of women and folks of color. Because we believe that by doing this, we change not only the face of entrepreneurship, but also we change the face of the communities and the support, the capital that we bring to push our generation forward. So I know I've gone on for a while and I get really passionate about this, but I want to make this a conversation with the people who are here and allow room for a discussion. So I'll pause.
Thank you for your comments. Such an inspirational story. If you have any questions, if you're on Zoom, please put them in the Q&A so that we can continue this conversation. We already have a couple of questions that have come in. Our first question is from a faculty member who asks, you've worked to open up entrepreneurial opportunities for women and minorities using private capital and private hard work. Do you think there is a role for government to play as well? How does your public policy background influence your work?
Absolutely. I think the government's role, it's so critical. And, thank you for that question, because I take a multidisciplinary approach to learning and also to working. And that's why I wanted to do those joint degrees. But to your question, though, the role of government is the largest investor across the board in almost all categories because they have the largest asset. It's the largest asset class. So with government, ensuring that number one, policy is addressing some of these key issues that we're seeing in communities. That why is it that we're seeing these percentages, right? So there's the policy role that the government plays. But then there's also the investment support that the government plays. So I know this this year, the administration, the Biden administration, started a grant process, particularly investing in science projects and also this different investment vehicles to support and push some of this work forward. So, my colleagues and I were thinking of definitely working and tapping into the government resources and making it a more collaborative effort. And then also on the local side, that becomes very, very critical. I think sometimes government, we think just only national, but local governments have a huge role in diving deeper into these specific communities. So, for example, right now we are working with we're working with an organization in Boston on a partnership to identify and support entrepreneurs who are building tech companies, who are diverse founders within the Boston ecosystem. And we're similarly talking to another group in New York.
Great, thank you. Another faculty member asks, can you talk about some of the ways that your company's mentorship program is structured?
Yeah. So it's evolved. So when we first started, as with my partners, we just had to be scrappy and reach out to anybody in our network that we thought was smart, mission oriented, and knew were experts in their field. So it was scrappy, but then we became more organized in our work. So number one, we partnered this year, for example, partnered with an organization called Bolster. Bolster is an amazing network with some of the top executives in the country who are true experts in their fields. So they advise some of our portfolio companies. In addition to that formal partnership, we also formed different committees based on advisory committees based on some of the things that we're focused on, so that if our founder need to talk to someone with banking expertise, we can reach out to Goldman or reach out to JP Morgan and help them support with that system. So it went from scrappy to being very, very organized.
Thank you. Another question related to mentoring. This one is a little bit more focused on F&M. You mentioned that Posse was a life-changing experience for you. So we're wondering, what advice would you have for F&M professors who are thinking about the possibility of working as Posse mentors, or even those who are already working as Posse mentors?
Yes, I think it's a phenomenal opportunity. The Posse students are so committed and so hardworking that they want to make a difference. And to have a mentor or an advisor, someone to say, hey, I've seen some of this, some of the things you want to do, I can help guide you along the way, is instrumental. For example, one of my current advisors and current investors in Visible Hands was a mentor of mine from Brandeis. And, this person, when I first began to think about the company, he teaches at the business school. I immediately reached out to him and said, hey, what do you think about this? How should I think about XYZ? Who should I reach out to? And I remember sending him my first deck. He ripped it apart. He sent it back with marks all over the place, and he spent 2 hours with me to go through every single slide. And there's no way that I could have done some of the things that I've done without him. So the mentorship and the advice is critical. And, it really does take a village. And he's not only an investor, but I think he's someone that I highly cherish and love for his commitment to not only me, but what we're doing.
Great, thank you. We have a question from a student now. It says, I'm a student here at F&M and would like to ask, how did you manage your time with academics and work during the early stages? What are some specific things that you and your partners did to help you really make the most of the Monday meetings?
Yeah, I think I learned some lessons about time management. First, when I was in undergrad, I had the personality of like, I want to do everything, right? I want to see everything, I want to explore everything, which is great, to be open. But I also realized that I needed to establish parameters in saying no. Because there was a moment in which I remember I was doing so much, and I had a job, and I remember I went to I went to work that day, and my boss at the time on campus, he fired me. And I was like, dude, you can't fire me. Like, I'm working so hard. I'm putting in so many hours. He's like, Daniel, but you show up late. You know, you were supposed to meet with this person and you forgot the meeting. That you're overly committed. So you're not really following through on the things that you say you're going to do. And I gotta say, Anne, that was I cried in his office and I was like, no, don't fire me. I need this. He's like, but I have to because it's for your own benefit. Walking out of his office, it really felt like a weight was lifted off my shoulders because it made me realize that I should be able to say no. I should be able to organize and prioritize better. And I took that lesson with me because, I realized, and when you say too many yeses, you squeeze all the juice, all the energy that you need to do other things. So when I went to graduate school, I was very selective with my time. So I knew that I wanted to build a company. So that time that I allotted, nothing would interrupt it. Nothing. And my family got to a point, my family was like, my friends and my family knew that at these hours, you're not going to get in touch with me. So if you need something, let me know way in advance. And that was how I was able to protect and manage my time.
Great advice. Thank you. We have a question from a staff member. It says, Of the projects you've worked on with Visible Hands, which was your favorite?
Oh,
And were there any surprising discoveries, roadblocks, or opportunities you encountered during these projects?
yeah. I mean, project. Well, this is a hard one because it's like it's choosing a favorite out of many. So, we've invested in 90 companies so far. We just started our second cohort in December, and that was 45 companies we started with. Um, it's hard to choose one, but I will give an example of one that definitely gets me excited and also shows me why it's important to push forward the work that we're doing. One of our companies is called Parfait, Parfait, and it's founded by four Black women, two MIT computer science PhD students, two Wharton MBAs, and they talk about how when they started their company, and this company is to use computer vision technology to help folks purchase customized wigs and products. Now, when they talk about when they first started the company, nobody will even give them $30,000 to go do this. And it blew my mind. I said, wait, you have two computer science PhD students in computer vision and two Wharton MBAs. And I said, what would happen if what about if they were white men? Or if they were just men, right? Would they get that funding? So I said, it bothered me. And I said, we have to really do something about this. And we invested in this company, one of the first institutional investors in this company. And they are crushing it right now. They just closed the $5 million seed round with Serena Williams, Serena Ventures as their lead, with other incredible investors who have come on. But this showed me that there's a missed opportunity here, all right? And that we have to take advantage and ensure that we're creating funnel systems and support to get capital to these incredible, talented entrepreneurs. So this is one of my favorites, but I mean, we've invested in 90 companies, so it's hard for me to choose one.
Well, we had another question that was asking, are you able to share some examples of the kinds of companies that Visible Hands has helped to launch? So would you like to share another story of another company that you're proud of?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, another one, it's a company called Nula Health. Nula, the founder, her name is Noelle Acosta, and you can also find information about her and the company online. Phenomenal entrepreneur. When I first met Noelle, she just had an idea. And what Nula Health does is providing support prenatal care, and leveraging test kits and apps so that women who are in the prenatal stages can have the tools to track their health. When I first met Noelle, she just had an idea, but the passion that she had about the problem and understanding, that got me really excited. So on a call with Noelle, she said, look, I just had a medical situation and the doctor said that I can't drive anymore, but this is really important to me. So I jumped on a bike to knock on doors and meet potential customers just to hear their problems. As an investor, you hear something like this, you're like, I want to invest in her, right? Like I want to, whatever she does, I want to work with her. So that just was immediately got me excited. And then we dove into the problem she was focused on, supporting her to go through the different ideation, supported her to create her brand and the tools that she could use to show her idea and pitch to investors. And Noelle just earlier this year closed $1.4 million in her pre-seed round. So, I just feel very fortunate to work with this incredible talent like that.
Great example. Thank you. We have a question from a student again. It says, as you continued your VC business, when did you realize that it was time to fully commit yourself to it instead of considering it a part-time venture? Like, when did you make that switch?
Yeah. For me, it was the problem was big enough, and it worried me that it worried me that if nothing is done, this could get worse, right? And I think this is a collaborative effort that we should all have. But my partners and I said we want to at least take a step. And I have three sisters, and if any one of them were to go try an idea and build a company, the chances of them receiving funding is less than 1%. I think like my sister Grace, she's harder working than I am. I think she's smarter. She's just incredible. Um, but the chances are that if she were to go out and raise money, we both were go out and raise money just by the current stereotypes and status quo, she'll probably raise less or probably not get none, right? So it bothered me enough to say we need to do something about this. And another point, actually, to the question that I want to pull out is, once you have the idea, what does it take to actually push it and to feel that you should do this full time? So for us was when you have the idea, you have to validate it, right? So we went out and we spoke to hundreds of entrepreneurs and hundreds of investors. My partner, we have our annual meeting with our investors later today and tomorrow, and we were looking at some numbers. We had over 400 plus meetings to raise $10.5 million, right? It's 400 plus meetings. So that shows the amount, and this is meetings with investors. So not even including meetings with entrepreneurs. So it shows the amount of work that it took to do the validation, to challenge our own assumptions, to refine the idea, to get to a place where we felt that we should go forward and do it.
Great, thank you. A faculty member asks, can you take us through the step-by-step process of what happens when a company is selected by Visible Hands?
Yeah. So I'll actually take you step-by-step process of like, how do we even select? The criteria that we're really looking for in entrepreneurs, number one is that, for me, I want to find someone who's obsessive about the idea, as I talked about Noel, right? That kind of willing to go the distance to learn more. The second thing is someone who worked on developing the skills to be able to address the idea. So, and they don't necessarily have to be, the expert, but at least they're putting the things in place or the team in place or the advisor, the right people around them to help get this done. And then the last thing is that I really I get excited about people too who are collaborative, because being an entrepreneur is already a lonely journey, and you want to have folks who are willing to reach out to others and say, hey, I need help. How can you join me? Because you have to build a team, you have to build a network of advisors and investors. So those are things that I get really excited about. So in the criteria of selection, we're looking for that, and we have a whole rubric and systems that we leverage. And then when they're accepted, they go through our 14-week virtual first accelerator. Now, this accelerator, the key things that we want to support with is, number one, how have you gone about validating the idea and supporting them to drive home that? Number two is that when you validate the idea, how do you go out and reach customers? So what is your go-to-market strategy, and helping refine that? And then the third piece is, you have those other two things in place. Now let's go raise money beyond the money that we've invested, right? Like, let's go bring on other investors, what I call connected capital. Because the more you connect the capital, that's what allows room for scale. And to add some numbers to this, so it's even more concrete, when we first went out to market, my partners and I said, look, we want to get 500 applicants, because we're a venture capital firm with an accelerator. So we want to get 500 applicants to this. We went out to market, we got 911 applicants for our first cohort, for our first application. And this was immediately validating that the talent is out there. So when you hear that there's not enough talent, that's already, it's already debunked. The talent is out there. We just have to put in the effort. And from that 900 applicants, we selected 45 companies to work with. This cycle, this year, we saw a 60% increase in the number of applicants. So from 900 to 1,400 applicants. And we were only able to select, again, 45 companies to work with. So that's, less than a 3% acceptance rate of companies that we're working with. So for me, it pains me that I have to turn away 97% of people who are applying to our platform. And it's so hard because we're calling folks who are coming from, we're turning down folks who have the skills and, incredibly talented, like students at F&M, and we're saying, look, like it's a tight pool, right? So it is a tough selection process. And I think that we need to expand the ecosystem to be able to support more founders.
What kind of feedback do you give to the people who are not selected?
Yeah. So, with every company is different, and companies are building at different stages, different scale, with different things that they need. But because we have, our criteria that we're looking for, I share that, like, maybe this was a piece that we thought was missing. This is something that you can work on this year. So next cycle, you can apply again. And then sometimes it's also just portfolio construction. Somebody could be very, very talented, but we may not think that we're the best investor for them. So we connect them to folks that we think are a better fit. So it could be a little bit challenging, but we're always trying our best to ensure that we have a softer landing for folks, even folks that we turn down.
Great, thank you. I just want to remind the audience we still have some time, so there's time to get your questions. You can just type them in the Q&A. We have another question from a faculty member. It says, the title of your talk is Inclusion Improves Innovation. Can you say more about why you believe that is true?
Absolutely. Innovation is just the idea of innovation is not a singular journey, right? To come up with an idea that's you can think about the idea, but in order for that idea to actually have a catalytic impact, for it to grow, for it to have life, you need to bring other people along the way. It has to be inclusive. And when it's not inclusive, it actually becomes constraint, and then people begin to get eliminated, or not eliminated, but begin to get excluded from the process. So, when we thought about Visible Hands, that we want to ensure that these companies that are being built, that they are inclusive, they are innovative, but they're thinking long term. That what is your first few employees, first 5 employees, if they're not diverse as a founder, it's really going to be hard to create that culture, that DNA into the company. So we really challenge the companies that we work with to say, look, ensure that the people that you're bringing on are diverse. On your employee side, think about your advisors, that they're also diverse, because this really also expand your framework of thinking, your network, your access to resources. And I think it just makes, makes you a better entrepreneur. And also, on the number side, it also shows that more diverse teams actually have a higher return on capital than teams that are not diverse. So inclusion makes innovation even better.
Great, thank you. Our next question is, what advice would you give to students who want to bring ideals around social justice and equity to career paths that have not been traditionally organized around that focus?
Yeah, I think I think it's so important to take on that challenge, and help us think in a different way. In fact, something that I'm emphasizing amongst our team is even within our own decision frameworks, how do we ensure that we're reviewing and eliminating biases that we may have had, right? Or familiarity bias or industry bias, whatever that is. So, I love this question because the social justice framework is not mutually exclusive for anything that we're doing, right? In society, from making investments to, I mean, any job, from just any job, construction to being a doctor or whatever it is, that it has to be fully embedded in it because we're intrinsically connected at heart, and ensuring that there's this social justice that I am my brother keeper, I am my sister keeper. If we keep those frameworks in our minds as we're up building companies, where our work life, I think it really makes just the ecosystem better. It makes it more exciting. I think it makes it more creative. So I love this question about implementing social justice across in all these industries. And it could be a challenge, but I think, whoever asked that question, I put that question back to you, that what are you going to do about it?
Thank you. Now, you've accomplished so much with this company, and you've always seemed to have the confidence to be in student leadership, to pursue your dreams and your passion, and that you're really fueled by this question of how we could have more equity in business and startups. So I'm wondering, was there ever a moment when you doubted that it was possible, or you doubted yourself? And how were you able to overcome that?
Yeah, I think, there the doubts happen. It happened, and I'm very obsessive about the people that I surround myself with. That I can go back to them and help them, help me stay on course. I remember when I was running for student government, the president role, there was a moment I was like, I called my mom. I was like, Mom, I think I'm gonna lose this. I'm working so hard, trying to understand the issues, trying, working with the students and the administrators to see, what do they really care about. And the encouragement from her just reassured me that even if I lose, there's still ways to support and help build this ecosystem in the school. So, with surrounding yourself with people around you who will help you understand the bigger picture, that is not necessarily the wins and losses, but is how do you want to contribute to something bigger than yourself? So I think when you take yourself from that perspective of winning and losing, it gives you a different focus. So there will be hard days. I mean, imagine, right, for us raising $10.5 million, 400 meetings, like the amount of no's that we got along the way. It could be very discouraging. But then thinking beyond that, like, what is this teaching me? How can I learn from this? What is this person really saying? And taking the punches along the way, but then saying, I'm going to fight back. I'm going to stand up. I'm going to keep pushing forward every single day and try my best.
Excellent advice. Thank you. This is a related question. It's from a faculty member. It says, can you speak to the challenges of being discouraged in the early stages of committing to a new idea?
Yeah.
How do you get past the messages of, this is not the way we have done things before?
Yes. Yes. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, especially before we had any check-in, those early no's were hard, because we're not paying ourselves. We're like, "Man, should we actually go find a job?" And there were moments that it was really tempting. I remember a pretty big company made me an offer, with a really attractive compensation. And I went to my partners, like, they made this offer. but I'm really committed to this, what we're doing. So it could, those are tough. But again, I'll go back to take yourself out of the wins and losses and think about the bigger picture, that what am I trying to accomplish here? Who am I doing it for? And just thinking in a bigger framework than our individual selves, because it's always bigger than us. What we're trying to do is always bigger than us. But the wins and losses on a day-to-day, it could be exciting and it could hurt, but know that, that it goes in waves, and don't get too high and don't get too low. Just be calm.
Really great advice for everyone who's trying to embark on a new project. We only have a couple of minutes left. I'm wondering if there's anything else that you want to make sure that you share with the F&M community, the students, professors, any words of encouragement, people who are trying to embark on a big project that's supposed to change something significantly like you've done.
Well, I'm honored for this opportunity. And to not be cliche, but to re-emphasize words that Steve Jobs shared that I think have been really important for me, is that the folks who consider themselves crazy and are willing to change the world are the ones who actually do it, right? That people will challenge your idea or may even call you crazy, that this is not going to work. The old way is better, but be committed to it. And I would say be committed more to understanding the problem than being committed to the solution. Because the solution needs enough breathing room for it to be iterative. But when you understand the problem, it makes you better at challenging and pushing back. And it makes you better at truly understanding what are the right paths and how should we avoid it. And then lastly, you can't do it alone. You just cannot do it alone. So it's okay to ask for help. And there are so many people out there who are willing to embrace you, hug you, push you, and support you. And for me, like, Ashley has been a phenomenal supporter. So I'm grateful for this opportunity to the F&M community. Thank you.
Thank you. We are so grateful to have had you with us. We're also grateful to Ashley for proposing this Common Hour and to Emily for interpreting for us today. We hope to see you at our Common Hour next week. Thank you. Bye-bye.